I'll begin. I think it's live now. A very good evening, ma'am. We are students of IIM Kozhikode, and we are currently pursuing a live project to ascertain the needs and priorities of startup founders and leaders with respect to leadership, teams, and culture. I'm Aditi Mamgain, a first year student of PGP program, and alongside my batchmate Anusha Goel, and I extend you a very warm welcome on our behalf today. It is an extreme honor that you joined us today to and decided to share your insights with us. A little bit of background about us. We both are engineering graduates and we have worked in cloud services startup and Microsoft respectively. Uh, just before we jump into Q&A, a brief intro about you.
Okay, so you want me to talk about myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm basically an educationist as well as an author, a poet, a storyteller, a translator. And I started my career as a faculty. So I taught first for about 16 years. Since I was moving with my husband's transferable job, I was teaching all over India. It was in Delhi that I joined first the Oxford University Press, India, as the managing editor for English language products for the school, for the school market. After that, I stayed there for about 7 years, and then I joined another company, which was at that time. I mean, it was an established company, but they did not have the educational products vertical, so they wanted me to come and start that. So I spent about 7 or 8 years there, and then I took basically I just took a break of about 4 years where I established my career as an author of a lot of fiction, non-fiction, poetry, translations, which I still continue to do. And then I picked up again my corporate career. So basically, I have always been in the production, part of the industry, the publishing industry, basically.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your introduction. I would jump into Q&A. So, if you may allow, I'd begin with my questions.
Please.
So, you've had such a tremendous journey over the years. So, what do you think has been, or were your most significant challenges, personally, in the context of your journey as a leader?
So, very frankly, when I joined the publishing industry, I had till then been teaching. So I knew products, of course,
Hmm.
but creating a product, designing a
Hmm.
product was something that it was, I was not so familiar with. But I joined you know as a leader of a team, of a product
Hmm.
team, and I had to learn very fast. So but the best thing that I realized at that time, like, it was a challenge, but I realized that the best way to learn was from my teammates, the team
Yeah.
which I was with. I learned from
Hmm.
them, and a lot, in fact. And of course, I had an excellent mentor in my
Hmm.
supervisor, who was the publishing director. He really guided me, and I learned a lot from him as well. So that was my first challenge, and I overcame it. And I think the products which came out during my tenure at that company are still doing, in fact. They are well known all across the
Okay.
school market. So that was a challenge which I did overcome. And then the next challenge I think I had was when I joined the startup,
Hmm.
where I was given a room and a desk and a
Hmm.
chair, and I had to begin the entire vertical. You know,
Hmm.
so that was really a challenge because as a product of books or publishing, I needed authors, and
Hmm.
there were no authors who were willing to write because for this particular for the startup, because it's they were not sure whether the startup is going to last or not. Similarly, I had a lot of problems, in a lot of challenges in recruiting the right people, hiring the right
Yeah.
team,
Hmm.
basically. And as you know, as a startup,
Hmm.
obviously, there are when it starts, then there are only few focus areas. One is of course the product. Second is the focus area is the cost of the product, of creating that product.
Hmm.
And third is the revenue that the product is going to bring in. So with these kind of focus areas, I obviously had to, I had a very tight budget on which I had to create the product. But at the same time, I had to also make sure that the product will do well in the market, will get us back
Hmm.
much more than the what I was going to spend on that. So basically, that was the focus area that time when I joined and when I created my team. The other thing, the other challenge, Aditi, is that when people from the industry, our talent from the industry are joining a company, no doubt they know probably that it is a startup.
Hmm.
Still, there are certain expectations
Yeah.
from the talent. So to convince them that it's good to have expectations, but what the talent that a startup really needs is the passion. So any person who joins, firstly, that person has to be very clear as to what that person is joining. It's a startup, and
Hmm. Yeah.
there will be very tight schedules, very
Hmm.
tight timelines for the product, as well as there will also be a very tight budget. So basically, the I would try to convince them. That was actually my challenge, and I think I had a very good team eventually. So I'm sure I
Hmm.
was able to, convince them that as the company grows, they will also grow. That is
Yes. Yeah.
basically the kind of passion that must be there.
Hmm.
In a new hire. It's not that you're coming in to a very established organization. This is so there will be changes, and along you are the person who will also bring in those changes. So you
Yeah.
will have also the power of decision making, which a lot of times the lower level executives don't have in an
Hmm.
established company. So that is another thing to look forward to, that you will have decision making powers, and your
Yeah.
decisions will bring in the changes, and that will create the growth in the company. So
Now I feel India has a startup culture. So I believe now it's easy as compared to when you did the same thing back, 10
absolutely,
years back
absolutely,
or
you're very
something.
right. You're very right.
Yeah. Now, because I have also worked in a startup for a brief period of time, but I never felt like I should not, like, there was no point of thing that I should work for an MNC or a startup. Only work mattered to me. But I can imagine go back, 10 years back or something, such a difficulty for recruiters to find right people for startup culture. As you already, mentioned the problem with recruiting the right people. So what was your strategy, dealing with that thing back then? Or uh,
So like I just told you that I was very upfront with all the
hmm,
talent that I was hiring.
hmm,
So what I kept in mind is that my strategy was this: is that if I am hiring a talent, that talent must have this the dream or the expectation that that person is going to grow, which
yeah.
means I'll just give you a very good example, especially when we create when we sort of design books.
Hmm,
A team is basically an editorial team, so I was
hmm,
hiring a lot of editors. Now editors also have the hierarchy. So
yeah.
here was an editor who had never managed a team.
Hmm,
So I was going to give that person a team to manage. But I knew that this person hasn't had industry experience of managing a team, right? So I
hmm,
knew that I will have to intervene. I will have to also help that person to understand how the team management is going to be. But then that person will grow eventually into that team management. So, I gave them that carrot that look,
hmm,
you are not managing a team right now. You will be given a team here to manage. Now, how you manage that team is going to make you grow. So that was
yeah.
one carrot that I gave. Second one was that I tried to ascertain whether the passion was there in that person. Because passion means that the person will go out of the way to create that product, right? May have to work beyond the normal work time. will have to meet very tight schedules. Um, they may need to add, but at the end of the day, their signature will go on that product. So that was
Yes.
going to be another carrot. So I said, when you this particular company very beautifully had this thing that they could put the names of the editors on the product, on the
Hmm.
copyright page. So that was another carrot. See, your name will go on it, so tomorrow people will know that you are the person also who has designed this product. So these were the ways that I tried to hire talent and help them to grow.
And you've mentioned that you had a mentor, right? So
Yes.
I just wanted to know more about that. Like, what was the advice that your mentors used to give you? And other than your mentor, like, do you had any set of like peers or advisors or board members that you relied on, and always went back to talking about your problems, specifically related to managing and leadership?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say that definitely I had mentors, and
Hmm.
as I told you that in my first company, I my the publishing director was really a mentor, and I am always will be grateful to him. And he was another person whom I used to go back to, and
Hmm.
ask, like, this is my challenge. How do I meet it? How do I help people understand that coming on with us, coming up on board, will help them as well. It's not that
Yeah.
they are only working, it's not a job. Basically, they are also going to further their career, and it will be a career growth for them. So how do I do it? So I would go back and ask my mentor. But most of my I would say that most of, other than the first company, during the startup, my mentors were more from the industry, but outside the
Okay.
company.
Okay. Yeah. So, with such an amazing experience, how have you seen yourself grow as a leader, like over the period of time?
Oh, it was a great, learning for me. Extremely great learning for me, because the first company I worked in was an absolutely established company with their organizational setup clear, and
Yeah.
been in India for years actually. So this for me was a completely new thing to adjust. As I told you, I was just given a room and a chair and a
Hmm.
table. That's it.
Yeah.
And I had to, create the team, create the product, and of course there was a deadline. So I was told that this is your deadline. So the first thing that I started doing is to make a plan. So
Hmm.
I made a 3-year publishing plan where the products that we required, I would keep discussing with the managing director, and explain to him, go and do a market research, go out into the market, talk to clients, talk to customers, find out what the market really needed, and then have internal discussions with my superior. I was reporting to the managing director. So I would have a discussion with him as to what was his thoughts, what kind of market did you want to enter. So I remember very clearly that you when we are doing a school product, there is a list
Hmm.
which
Ye-
actually adheres to the subject areas of the school. And one of
Yeah.
the most what did I say, most popular and most revenue earning product in the school market is the English textbooks. But I remember,
Okay.
and this was again something I learned. He said,
Hmm.
let's not start with the main English product because there's a lot of competition in that.
Hmm.
He's
Hmm. Hmm.
very right. So let's start with something that is simpler, that is that there will not be too much competition with, which are not the main products, but supplementary product. And we started with that, and that really helped. So that was another learning I learned. It's not that you go bang into the market, you slip into the market, sort of try to get a toehold, and then you
Hmm.
start expanding your market share. So that was a great learning that I had. The other one was, of course, as I told you, that how can I get a team together, a team
Hmm.
of people who will be product managers, who will be editors, and how can I get a team of authors who would create the product? Because uh, books are not always created in house. We do need authors who are going to write the books. I'm sure
Yeah.
even you have realized, even in your all along your course, that the books that you use, you sometimes pick up books because of the author, right? So it's
Yeah.
important to
Yes. Yes.
have authors who are well known, authors who have
Yeah.
the kind of background that is required.
Credibility. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to look for authors like that. So that is where, I remember, I we picked up for a particular kind of book, we picked up an author who was well known in Bollywood, and
Yeah.
I we had to
Okay.
go, and like convince him to become an author, going to a shoot. So they were these are the various kind of experience I had, and they were really, really huge learning experiences for me.
I can definitely
Yeah,
understand
second
that.
is that when the product is there, comes out finally in the
Hmm.
market, then we
Yeah.
see how the product is moving. So
Hmm.
depending on the movement of the product, you will get to know, did I gauge the demand of the market correctly, or where
Hmm.
did I go
Yes.
wrong somewhere? So hindsight also helps when you know that, okay, this is probably where I could have improved this part of it or that part of it, with whatever part it may be. So those are also some leadership learning that I received.
Yeah. And I believe whenever the product or a company is in the ideation phase, it's very difficult to convince people, other people, in believing in yourself or your company or your idea. So that is a very
Absolutely.
difficult, because for an established company, it's really easy, right? They have their
Yes.
name and everything.
The branding is already there. To establish the
Yes.
branding, to create a market share, is the challenge that, any startup has, right? First, in the first few years.
So, just a question about when you were working with a startup. So, because we all know tight schedules and everything. So, for your team, just a question that did you ever, like, what was your leadership style in terms of for your team? Was there any like hand holding from your side, or you had like full faith? Like, I'll give them the objectives and they'll be able to fulfill everything.
Um, I have always worked in two ways. One is that to be
Hmm.
involved in the projects. Involved
Hmm.
in what way? Constant discussions with the
Okay.
person concerned, with my junior. Okay, so but at the same time, I have always uh, let them free to express their
Hmm.
own views, because
Yes.
I have always believed that getting getting decisions which are based on experience, because they have also come in with some amount of experience. It may not be
Hmm.
as much as I would expect, but there is experience behind them. So if that experience, if I can tap that experience, then that is enriching my own decision making capacities, right? So I have always been like that. At the same time, as you just spoke about tight timelines, so when there
Hmm.
were tight timelines, and I could see that probably my my junior was unable to probably manage, I would always step in and
Hmm.
say, give me 5 minutes, I'll do it.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that made them feel that I'm a part of the team. I'm not just somebody who just gives work and gives timelines and expects and has expectations. It's not like that. I understand where your problems are, and I'm there always to solve them. So that has always been my style.
Great. Now I'll be handling giving you some culture related questions. So actually, culture is such a big word for MBA students. What we all hear during the summer placements and everything. Culture is very important, very important. So I just wanted to know from your perspective, like what actually defines culture of the company, be it a startup or a MNC or whatever.
Basically, I think what defines culture is what are the long term and short term goals of any company. So, right from the top management to the lowest executive, they must be
Hmm.
completely aware of it. And that
Hmm.
can only happen when there is consistent dialogue happening between the top management and the
Hmm.
executives. And as I said, uh, what we call the flat hierarchy, that's also very
Yeah.
important, because then the executives, the junior executives, also have the power of decision making, and they feel that their word has a value, their experience has a value, and that brings in the passion, for the company. So I think any startups culture, the first culture is to induct the new talent and help
Hmm.
them to understand that this is your company. It's not a job that you're doing. This is a part of your career,
Yes.
and that, I think, is what makes the difference.
And speaking about aligning culture with the strategy of the firm, like how are they going to do business? So how does that, fits in?
So what happens is, like I just said, that the first thing that any company, any startup is looking at is how to create the product, and at the lowest cost within the timeline,
Hmm.
meeting the demand of the market. And then how do we go into the market with that product, how do we pitch it, and what
Hmm.
kind of revenues come in from it, right? So this has always been the basic focus. And if you are make your all the employees in your company, firstly, obviously a startup has very very few employees, because you will only bring in the most important people, and the people who actually matter. So for example, there'll be a lot of positions which where there will be who will be managing multiple portfolios. So
Hmm.
that's a very common thing that happens in any startup. So those few people who are there, they must understand the entire journey that that startup is planning to take. What are the goals of the startup? So that is, I think, what makes them feel that we are a part of this company. The culture that we have in this company is our culture. This feeling of ownership is what is very important, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So, according to your experience, or we just wanted to know from your perspective, what what are the significant challenges that leaders and founders face when more investors join, or let's suppose you scale up, because definitely the set of responsibilities change and everything. So,
Obviously. So what you're saying is that, first let me talk about, when you're talking about investors join.
hmm,
So in my experience, the startups that I had my experience in, none of them actually had any funding, because
okay,
either there was a parent, in both the cases there was a parent company, so there was no need of a funding.
yeah,
And funding often can, like, I mean, today the two types of funding that are happening are the people who's given the seed money, which is the initial
yeah,
funding, and you have, of course, the venture capitalists. Now, in both, for example, when in the initial stages when you are taking funding, it helps you, no doubt, of course it helps you, it also creates a buzz. But at the same time, you have the people who are giving you the initial funds. Firstly, the fund is not very much, it's less.
yeah,
But
hmm,
the equity share may be much more, that
yes,
will be demanded by those people, right?
hmm,
Also, there's a pressure
hmm,
that you have to move fast. So maybe the way you would want to move, or the speed at which you would want to move, may not be in your hands, may not be controlled by you.
hmm,
Now, when it comes to the neck after that, as you said, for scaling up, probably you go to a VC. Again, the same thing happens, is that the control goes into the VC's hands, basically,
yeah,
right? Equity shares are much more. There are also the problems of compliance. Of course, probably it's more organized. So, but then it takes a long time for you
hmm,
to pitch, to go through the compliance issues, everything. And but at the same time, what you will be giving up a lot of your equity share, and they finally, the control goes into their hands. What is the product, what is the timeline, all that goes into their hands. So these are the things which I think, um, every startup, I mean, funding is always helpful, but if they can avoid it, they would like to avoid it.
okay,
And fully, the companies I was with, they could avoid it, so they were
yeah,
able to move at their own speed.
okay. So, let's suppose, people right now we have angel investors, series A, series B. So, I think almost every startup is going for that. So, what, in your opinion, these leaders or founders should do to manage investors' expectations, or, to address all these challenges?
So, to address these challenges, first and foremost, I think they have to first establish their brand. The brand establishment becomes important, because if there is a brand, then there is a lot of buzz around it. I mean,
Hmm.
it's vice versa. I mean, you have to create the buzz to create the brand, and a brand is
Hmm.
created, there's a lot of buzz about it. So, when there is a buzz, then obviously, in the market, your reputation spreads, and you are able then to move at the speed that probably your funders expect you to, your investors expect you to. So that's why, so I think the founders as well as the leaders over there will have to have a clear strategy as to
Hmm.
how they're going to create that buzz, how they're going to build the brand, in so that the growth becomes more visible.
Sure. Now I'll be handling it over to Anusha, and she'll be taking you through the next set of questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for the questions for responding to the questions till now. And I would like to go deep over the leadership questions and move towards a bit about leadership coaching. So, as we know, in the startup experiences, as you have also mentioned, that having a mentor has really helped you in your journey. So, diving deep over there, we would like to understand what is your perception of leadership coaching, and how it, have you ever tried it to, grow in terms of your leadership ladder, and how it has helped you.
So, like I said, the first company that I joined, where I learned much of the job, I would say, uh, there were always these periodic management and coaching, leadership, executive coaching. There were always these periodic things, and they really helped because they give you a viewpoint, they give you a different angle to look at, a different focus, which helps you to understand probably why you're facing the challenges and how you can overcome them. So that is important. Other than the fact that this one-to-one thing, which is mentorship, is also very, very important. So when I became, I was there in the startup and I had to create my team. I would give them this constant periodic internal coaching that was very much there. And then with my I would coordinate with the the HR, and also give them some kind of external coaching. That I felt was also very important, because there, when it's internal coaching, then you are all the time thinking about the company and its products. But when there's external coaching, then there is the viewpoint becomes much wider, much broader, and that I think helps. So that is what I would always make sure that my team always receive that, and I was always there for them as a mentor.
Yeah. So, talking about this external help which one can receive, and specifically getting the diverse perspectives. So, apart from one to one coaching, which can definitely help an individual to grow, do you think onboarding the external agency for the entire team to grow further in their respective leadership journeys would help? And how
Yes.
effective it could be?
Yes, definitely it would help, because there are a lot of coaching, companies which come on board maybe annually, and then they have a full plan. So if you go along with their plan, then it really helps, because the plan is very progressive. So when they begin, it's very at the initial stages, and then as they give the next coaching session, and the coaching session becomes more advanced and progressive, and you can actually see probably the growth of the individuals who are taking the coaching, when you have their the discussions, and you have open mic, kind of a thing. So you are able to see that the person has moved from the initial coaching to the advanced coaching. I mean, the person's mind is working more. So yeah, it's good to have them on board, because then you don't have to worry about the coaching plan. It's they who create it for you.
Definitely. So, talking from your experience as working in startups and some experienced organizations as well. So, what do you think could be the key areas of intervention or opportunities that, from leadership standpoint, that external agencies can target apart from the holistic leadership development? Some
So
key areas.
yeah, so the key areas would be: number one, uh, managing the individual's expectations, career expectations, managing the individual's expectation of where the company is going to grow, and possibly managing their day-to-day challenges, the daily challenges that they face. And as I said, that most of my people were also team leaders. So how will they manage their team? How is it that you delegate jobs, and yet you keep a finger on the pulse? So I think these would be the key focus areas. And of course, most important, keeping morale up.
Right. And which is a very necessary part of it, had been as well, and in the present context it has, it plays a significant role given people are working from home, and
Absolutely.
it's a very bizarre situation to be in. Okay, so my next question would be like, while startups find these look for these external agencies, what are the key parameters they would judge those external agencies while onboarding them for external leadership coaching?
So I think number one, of course, is that you do take, they already have had clients. You do get some client feedback, market feedback. They themselves are companies, so they would be enough. They should have a branding, and of course, the plan that they are going to present to you should match with the company's strategies. So, like I said, for example, both the places the hierarchy was very flat. So if you're coaching, your whoever is coming in for your coaching, the coaching company should understand that this is the hierarchy and this is how, so their strategy or their planning, their coaching plans also need to match that. So that is what we basically need to see, that this, it should match very well. And so that we can, when you're taking a coaching company on board, we are able to exploit it to its maximum.
Yeah. So giving the personalized experience while companies approach can would really help there, while matching the expectations of a company.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
So next, I would like to understand that how can external firms approach these startups for the first time? Definitely, we have email, we have Facebook, Medium, we have LinkedIn, social media perspectives. What do you think would be the most effective for startup perspective, so that external firms come on their radar for that?
I think when an external firm approaches, they should come up with a presentation, right? They should do their homework first to find out, the kind of company this is. Then they come up with a presentation, and that should be followed up with a discussion as to what are the expectations of the company and whether the startup firm is confident enough to meet
Yeah.
those expectations. So I think a physical presentation where there is a discussion and all. I mean, very frankly, yes, you can use the online version. You can have your Zoom work. I mean, Zoom presentations and so on. But maybe I belong to the old school. But then I think a physical presentation actually has the maximum impact.
Right. Definitely, and having the leadership coaching to be onboarded, that really makes sense to have the right kind of effect onto the other person's mind.
Absolutely.
The next, I would like to understand that while selecting the firm, do you think that having the sector specific experience for the leadership coaching would be really effective, and
So
how to what
yeah,
extent it would?
yeah. So I think sector experience matters, but when it comes to leadership and management, to a great extent, it would be similar. Managing a team would be similar across industries. So sector experience matters, yes, because obviously there will be certain differences, but to a great extent, keeping a morale up, helping up, managing a team, scheduling timelines, uh, trying to, maintain the quality of the product. So these are the things which are common, I think, across all products that are created in different industries. So, to a great extent, you could. I mean, if a company does not have sector experience, uh, you can bring them up to date with the kind of industry that it is. But I think one can accept also those coaching companies who do some amount of homework on their sector and then come and do the coaching. But yes, if you get a coaching company which has sector experience, I would prefer
Yeah.
that kind of company. Yeah,
So that would be an added advantage for the company.
absolutely, yes, certainly.
So one probably, though, we are towards the end. So I would like to understand that how the leadership coaching would, could differentiate in terms of while coaching the organization or while coaching to a startup. Since you have worked in different environments, it would be really helpful for us to understand that thing.
So I think coaching in a startup is completely different from coaching in a organized, established company, because there your managers have already had some experiences, and there is already they can depend on the setup of the organization, right? But in a startup, like I just told you, that sometimes multiple portfolios have to be managed, right? So you don't have enough people there, so sometimes you are juggling different kinds of jobs as well. So here the coaching has to be very different. They have to explain to them how they can manage their time, how they can manage their talent, so that they can juggle the different portfolios. So it's in fact it's there's a lot of difference, in fact, the kind of coaching that you would give to managers of a startup, and the kind of coaching you would give managers of organized company. Because in the organized company you are actually just trying to build on their on whatever the organization has given them. Here you're
Exactly.
starting with much, I would use the word, raw material.
Right.
And
So yeah,
the
so
challenges are much more. The challenges are much more in a startup. The challenges are much less in organized company.
So, like, given from your experience, I can understand that definitely when firms approach the startups or a firm, they should have those personalized context in which the industry is going, in which their company is working, and in what kind of environment the startup or organization they prefer, and the challenges that exist there. So that would be really helpful for an external agency to approach the right company there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they must themselves know what they can offer. What is it?
Right.
What kind of training can they offer? What kind? So that they must be confident that they will be able to manage the challenges that are there in a startup.
Right, right. Absolutely. And that would also help them define the proposition, and in terms of the revenue expectations, that will also help.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Um, Ma'am, I would say that it was a really enriching experience for both of us, and probably it will be helpful for all the viewers who are viewing this. We got to understand a lot about the startup, and a bit difference about the startup versus the big organizations, and the our objective about understanding the leadership coaching perspective. That was really a fulfilling experience for both of us.
Thank you so much, Aditi and Anusha. I will only say this much, that this is completely my personal experience. So there could be many managers who may not agree with me, but this is completely what how my learning from working with startups. And so I am so happy. I mean, I'm delighted that it will be useful to you because
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not a management guru or anything like that, but I can only talk about my experiences. But thank you so much for having this discussion with me, both Aditi and Anusha.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time today for us. Your insights will be really valuable for our project. We are going to
Thank you.
fully utilize it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. A good
Thank
evening
you
to all
so
of
much,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am.